Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Star Wars Extravaganza Strikes Back. I am your host, Alex Schmitz, and with me today is Andrew Gleason.
Hi.
And Kenneth McNulty.
Hello!
All right. And we are here today, old friends from the Tech Heads days at Ohio University. We are back to discuss the new Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi, that's just been released in theaters. Those of you watching this on my YouTube channel will be able to find the Star Wars Extravaganza podcast we did back in 2014, back in Ohio University. That was a podcast we did just talking about the saga and speculating about Episode 7 before we knew it was called Force Awakens or had seen anything about it. So that's kind of a fun one to listen back to.
I agree. I should listen to that again and see how wrong we were. How wrong were we, Alex?
Quite wrong.
That sounds about right.
Alex,
Well,
it makes me feel any
I had a
better.
bunch of pitches.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Oh, man. A quote from the movie.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, we're done. Good job, guys. That's a wrap.
Well, it was in the trailer, so we don't even have to seen it, but
Spoiler.
that's it.
There we go. All right, so yes, you can listen to that podcast if you want to get some of our broader thoughts on the Star Wars saga in general, especially the 6 films of George Lucas. But here today, we're going to be talking about The Last Jedi specifically, and before we dive into that, we're going to give some spoiler-free thoughts on Last Jedi, as well as our impressions of The Force Awakens and Rogue One, kind of where we stand with the Disney era of Star Wars in general before we went into this film. So as for me, I'm somebody who I liked Force Awakens when I initially watched it. On subsequent viewings, though, and thinking more about it, I kind of started to find more flaws with it. I wasn't happy with how similar it was to the original films, and how safe it played it at points. And along with some of the plot holes and convenient mysteries and stuff like that. So Force Awakens is kind of mixed for me. Rogue One, I loved when I saw it the first time, and I still love it now. So that was definitely a highlight of the new Disney era for me. How about you, Andrew?
I didn't like Force Awakens. Force Awakens had a weird journey with the first time the opening weekend, because I saw it 3 times that first weekend. And the first time, I just had this weird gut feeling that there was something off about it to me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the second time, I really tried to love it. I tried to look past its flaws, and I succeeded in that. And then the third time I watched it, I was just could not see it past. I could not see the forest for the trees. It was I did not like it, and ever since then, I've just not liked The Force Awakens. Mostly because it has a lot of storytelling and filmmaking problems to me. I actually think it's decent Star Wars. I think it's just not a good film.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with you. The fact that we completely diverge from what the main focus of the movie is, finding Luke Skywalker,
Yes.
to then go take care of Starkiller Base, and then, we conveniently come back to Luke Skywalker when R2 suddenly wakes up at the end of the movie to give us the rest of the map.
Yeah. I've always said that J.J. Abrams is a director who believes in living in the moment. He does everything to make each scene great, but he does not do a lot to make the scenes fit together in a cohesive narrative.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think of Rogue One?
So, this is where Kenny and I are going to diverge, because I actually like Rogue One better than I like 7, by a decent margin, because Rogue One, or Force Awakens, I believe, starts off very strong and gets weaker and kind of falls apart as the movie goes. Rogue One does the opposite, where I think the first act is kind of a mess. The second act is a little better, and then the third act is just great, and it just ends on such a great place. There's actually a fan edit where it cuts out the first 2 acts of the movie, and it's just the last act, and it's fantastic.
Interesting. All right, and then Kenny, how about your thoughts on Force Awakens?
Well, I'll tell you this. J.J. Abrams is a hack, and I'm not excited for 9.
That's fair. I can't even hate.
You guys pretty much covered it all. I'm going to be honest. I wasn't very optimistic to 7. First time I watched it, I had the blinders on because it was Star Wars. I cried when they first saw the scroll started going again. I heard the music. Disney knew how to sucker me in because they played it in the past and played everything I loved with a very similar story to 4. bringing a lot of proper nouns like Leia, Han, and everything like that. I was really excited because I thought they're going to go with Jason's storyline for the Legacy of the Force era, but it's probably just because I like too much of the old EU. I just didn't like the direction they took a lot of the characters, so I wasn't a huge fan. I really was only invested in Finn, which we'll talk about with 8, but that was like the storyline I was really into, and yeah, I just one of the biggest complaints too I know I had too is the fact that Poe was supposed to be he's supposed to die in 7, so his character's a bit flat. So I'm glad they kind of fleshed him out more, but it just felt like a movie that tried too many things to play safe, but also had too many tendrils going out elsewhere and just couldn't find its footing. So I wasn't a huge fan.
All right, and then Rogue One sounds like you thought it was worse than Force Awakens based on Andrew's statement.
It was single-handedly the worst Star Wars thing I have ever seen.
Why?
I would gladly watch the Christmas special over that any day, because at least I have a reaction that's positive and laughing. And I'll tell you one reason why. And every fan who listens here, if you listen to me talk more, you'll know. I literally got a tattoo. Not of Kyle Katarn's face, my favorite character, because I thought it'd be weird to have a man's face in my arm, so I picked from the Jedi Knight series to have a tattoo. And my favorite character, I literally have 2 action figures, the same one of Kyle Katarn, my favorite character. And you may not know this, so here's a bit of education for the rest of you. The story of Kyle Katarn, Cassian Andor takes his role in the story for Rogue One, and they single-handedly butchered my favorite thing from Star Wars. Not only left on the table, but mutilated it, threw it into a power converter, and let it fly after the stars. They killed the one thing I love most in Star Wars, and I had so much faith in them, and I can never forgive them for that. Though I will tell you this, the third act is one of the coolest space battles and best action sequences I've ever seen in the Star Wars film. Yes. And without spoiling anything else, no other spoilers. I'll just say it was terrible. Don't watch it.
Interesting. I forgot that because, I knew there was another story about the finding the Death Star plan, so that was with Kyle Katarn.
And here's to tell you folks how close they got it, how Disney really tried to play safe. Jan Ors was with him, his girlfriend, the one who actually helped him take the things. Jyn Erso, tell me how close it is to Jan Ors. Oh my god, it's like they tried to copy the name. So there you go, folks.
They are one letter off from each other.
They didn't try hard. Cassian Andor, I'm like, it's different, but Jan Ors Jyn Erso, and I was like, that's why I was so hyped. I'm like, this is the story I like. But I digress. That's why I didn't.
All right, fair enough. So we have some diverse opinions here, clearly, about our opinions of Star Wars. So now we're going to dive into talking about The Last Jedi in a spoiler-free, just basic impressions, and then we're going to dive into the spoiler-filled, detailed discussion that's going to take up the rest of the podcast. So as for me, I've seen the movie 3 times now, and I've liked it more on each viewing. I would say I found more things to appreciate about it. So I would definitely say it is worth seeing The Last Jedi. It is very different from any other Star Wars film we've seen before, but I think that that's a good thing for the most part. It takes a lot of risks, and some of those risks pay off, some of them don't. But overall, it leaves me with a very satisfied feeling, and I'm excited about what the potential for 9 is. So that's my thoughts. Andrew?
So spoiler free, I've seen it twice, so I am but a lowly knight to your mastership. Seen it 3 times. But I also liked it a lot more the second time I saw it. I was able to look past a lot of the initial flaws, and kind of just be swept up in the grander moments. There's still some snags, but a lot of the snags are not as bad when you watch it again. The movie really does flow once you know where it's going. A lot better. Because the first time I walked out of it, I was like, man, that movie took forever. And the second time I walked out, I'm like, it's over already? I was floored. So yeah, I think that the movie is very good. It's definitely the best of the Disney movies. It's probably the best. It's definitely going to be the best of this trilogy. It's good Star Wars. I think the highs in this are some of the highest, best moments we've seen on the Star Wars movies since the original trilogy.
I definitely would agree with that. Kenny, what are your thoughts?
I definitely agree. I still stand by, spoiler free. I gave this movie a solid 7 out of 10, which is phenomenal. I definitely had a great time with it. Really enjoyed a lot of the action sequences, like I said, characterization, and a lot of the arcs, like I said, they fixed, I think, from 7. A lot of the issues left out, Rian Johnson, as you pointed out, again, took a risk. And one thing I really grappled with why I like this movie so much more than 7 was because they did something new. And I really, really respect that with Rian, and I really like where they went. And the biggest thing I definitely say, a lot of the big moments. Like, it definitely helped feed in with the crowd the first time I saw it. Like, Andrew was there. The crowd reacted very, very, like, audibly to a lot of the scenes, which really helped with it. And those powerful scenes are almost, like, hedge-pointed better because of it. And I think that, like, the highs were some of the highest I've ever seen in Star Wars. And stand by, this will definitely be the strongest this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And something else to say was amazing. Oh, yeah, now, upon, I was kind of, like, opposite of you guys. But the second time I saw it, my opinion didn't change in the movie. I actually noticed one discrepancy I'll talk about later that I wasn't a fan of. So I kind of was, like, a little more critical the second time. But I still liked it.
All right. Good to know. All right. So here we are. We're at the spoiler warning. So put on your Princess Leia hair buns and go away. If you have not seen the movie, we're going to be spoiling basically everything, getting into detailed discussion from here on out. So this is your last chance.
And no disintegrations in one.
Oh, that's what you say. I don't listen to Darth Vader.
Hey, my friend doesn't like you.
I don't like you either.
See, he gets it.
Oh, so are you two? You're Ponda Baba and the other guy.
Yeah, and the other guy, he's my favorite kid. It's like, oh my god. Okay, I've got a joke to tell once we're
was this
yes,
Dr.
Male?
Evazan.
Yeah, it's a Male.
Yeah, this is Male. Okay, carry on. He's gonna do the whole bit.
There we go. It's Dr. Evazan. That's the other character's name. Okay, so we're officially in the spoiler section. So I think we might as well start kind of talking about the sections of the movie, just kind of move through the movie. Or do you think we should do chronological order, or should we go with like what we liked first and then go into what we didn't like later? What do you guys think?
I think we can walk through the movie first if we want.
Yeah, I think we should walk through the movie because otherwise it's going to be a disjointed mess of us complaining about different parts.
Okay, that's fine. So let's talk about just that whole opening sequence then with the bombing run and all that stuff. I definitely was. I thought for one of my complaints about Force Awakens was that we didn't get enough cool new ships and things like that. You know, that's something I love about the prequels. And in Force Awakens, we just got like X-wings and TIE fighters, basically.
Yeah, we didn't really get a good diversity of ships, honestly. Even the old ships, like A-wings, B-wings, even B-wings, going to some of the newer vessels like C-wings. We didn't get really anything new, and that's one of the cool things about the old canon, because we could dip into crazy stuff I thought they'd go into.
I agree. That's one of my favorite things about Star Wars. Like, every time I see a new Star Wars, it's like, ooh, what kind of cool vehicles are going to be, like, in this? What, like, neat technology are they going to, like, come up with?
The stars part. Like, one of the space battles, some of the biggest things we love about Star Wars, and they just really only had X-wings. That kind of wow. So I'm glad to see new vessels, but I will say the beginning bombing run, those, like, B-52 style bombers were really dumb.
Right. Well, you could definitely see the design flaw when, like, one TIE fighter went into it when the bombs were armed and it like blew up three of them.
And you think at this point, since they had a Republic, they had better bombers, like, you know, B-Wings, for instance, which they had in Episode 6. I had to say when they were rebels. Like, I don't know why they were so much more efficient, because they could defend themselves, only needed 2 pilots, and had better bomb bays. Not just one glaring flaw. Like, it was supposed to look cool, and I get it. More akin to, again, like a flying fortress bombing, like a German stronghold. But I get the visual appeal. I just practicality made sense.
Right. Actually, yeah, there's a lot of people complaining about those things, like, on the internet.
It didn't make sense. Like, they were
well, everybody's like, well, they're in space, so the bombs wouldn't fall down. They would, like,
magnetize to a larger vessel or have a homing system. Like, I'm sure they explained it away with Star Wars logic, but at the same time, it was...
Well, like, also, like, there's an inherent flaw when you have to push the arm button, and then a TIE fighter can shoot the armed bombs and have them all explode.
And
like, there's a lot of problems with them, but like,
switch, they'd be smart enough to put a failsafe at the bottom too. They don't need the switch to hit it. There'd be another one at the bombing bay in case the person up there dies, for instance. Like, that would never happen.
But I do appreciate this, like, World War II reference, because it's like a callback to like the original Episode 4 like influence of like the old World War II movies that George Lucas liked to watch with the bombing bay. So I get like what they're going for with it, and it doesn't like bother me as much, despite the fact that there are like a lot of like logical problems.
I mean, they're literally based off the famous movie, the Bay of the Ridge, whatever it was, with the actual Death Star scene in the trenches. They literally ripped it shot for shot from that movie.
They did.
Right. Well, I saw a thing from the Visual Dictionary, just a picture online, that basically said that when those bombs turned red, it basically meant, they had like the electromagnetic thing turned on, so that's why they fell down towards the planet. So that part didn't bother me, and I thought visually they look cool for sure. The Star Wars movies just haven't been consistent with shields. That's something I've noticed.
Yeah, that's a big complaint I have.
Yeah, well, like, because Poe's X-wing gets shot like once in the back, and it makes like his guns go out. So it's like, when are the shields blocking the lasers versus when are they actually like hitting the ship itself? That's why the fact that the TIE fighter wing like hit it and made the whole thing explode. It's a little iffy there. But besides all that, one part I really liked was a shot. There was one shot that I really, really loved, was when Paige caught the timer, made it explode, and then you saw the explosion coming up towards her from below while her face was like against the grate, like right before she died. I really, really love that shot.
Yeah, it looked cool. I definitely meant that. To touch on what you said though with the shielding, like I do totally agree. Where one of the biggest discrepancies I had too, I'd use that word again, is in Star Wars it's clearly established the reason you have deflector and blaster shields is to keep silly fighters off your back. And like I get with a larger vessel that's just not doable, but at the same time they're not consistent with that either, with having a vessel that would be protected from fighters. And they're like, no, we'll have these off to conveniently have X-Wings be able to fight us, but larger vessels can't touch us. That's just not how it's ever worked, and it's interesting to see they chose that. So that kind of weirded me out.
Mm-hmm.
To have the Dreadnought not be, at least immune until like the shield generator was taken down, which is usually something they establish first.
And
they have to eye on it first.
And this is something that didn't bother me, but I've seen a lot of discussion about it online. The opening bit where Poe is having his discussion with Hux, where he's buying time, and he's doing the, I'll put you on hold, hello, is anyone there? That whole shtick. Did that bother you guys?
I thought it was funny.
No, it's fine. It's actually much better because Episode 7 opens with a very similar sequence where they bring him before Kylo, and he's like, so who talks first? Do I talk first? Do you talk first?
Right.
The problem I have with that sequence is that we're trying to establish Kylo as a villain, like he is like Darth Vader too, or whatever, and you're automatically like in the first scene he's in undercutting Kylo as a villain by having Poe make fun of him. In this movie, since Hux is like a secondary villain, and B, already been established as that guy that Kylo Ren fights with and gave one cool speech in 7, it's much better. Like, it's fine with me, because, like, I mean, Hux is never going to be like... Hux is everybody's whipping boy in this movie. I mean, Snoke literally wipes the floor with him at the end of the scene, so... like, it's fine. So that part's cool. It's actually very funny. It's a very nice use of the modern humor that these movies are going for.
It fits Poe really well too for his character, so that's why I was like you said, you've already established that, so I was totally fine with him being like that, because that's who he is.
Yep. Yeah, and in each of the screenings I've went to, that scene always got laughs, so I think clearly it worked too. Other thing I want to mention about that opening bit is I do really like the Dreadnought, the fact that it has those two huge cannons to serve as like long-range artillery. I think that's a cool design, and I like that the commander of that ship, when Hux was like, why is a single fighter, stopping you? And he's like, well, we should have launched our TIEs 5 bloody minutes ago. It kind of establishes that there are competent people in the First Order, but there are higher-ups above them who sometimes stymie them.
I definitely agree. It definitely shows the incompetence of Hux, because definitely this movie is a testament to his hubris and just how incompetent of a commander he is. Not as incompetent as Kylo, but pretty bad. And that definitely, when we talk about it later on, it definitely shows to be one of the biggest complaints people have that is pretty well explained in the movie. I can explain it away, but yeah, no, I definitely agree, because it shows the other like admirals are pretty well off, but Hux is just could be the worst. Also,
by the way, props to whoever the actor is in charge of, who was the captain of that Dreadnought, because he really sold it. Like he went the extra mile, despite the fact he's only in like this movie for maybe a minute.
He was memorable. Like one of my friends said the same thing. Like he was actually well done, especially for an Imperial commander. He had the same dour demeanor and was just like, I'm done with Hux's stuff. I'm going to take care of this by myself.
Yeah, no, I like that. And then, I guess then we see Finn waking up. He says, "Where's Rey?" That's the first thing he asks.
Naked bag leaking. What? You fried shit.
Oh, that's actually great. I actually love how like the technology update for applying Bacta.
Yeah, it's a lot more efficient, honestly. You don't have to be submerged.
Although I remember seeing after Force Awakens some fan art of Finn with like a cybernetic thing on his spine, and I thought that looked cool. So I thought that it would have been nice if we had gotten that, but.
And fun thing too, I'm sure. I mean, you guys know this, but like for fans too, in case you didn't know, fun fact: the reason that Kylo's scar doesn't match up where it was before is because Rian Johnson thought it looked silly.
That's true.
Yeah, I saw that, and he's right. You know, it was kind of in an awkward spot on his face.
It looks way cooler. I admit that. At first, I was like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Oh, this does look more visually."
It does look better.
But yes, then we cut back to the scene from Force Awakens. They recreate it with Rey coming up with the lightsaber. She hands it to Luke. This moment that we've been waiting 2 years to find out what he's going to do. And he tosses it over his shoulder.
Great. Perfect. Like the best answer. Like, that's actually be a running theme throughout this movie where Rian Johnson's like, okay, remember all these things that J.J. Abrams set up? Yeah, we're just gonna not
take off
deal with that.
Right. Well,
yeah.
And it kind of goes into an overriding thing about like how we put all this importance on objects, but that they aren't really that important.
You do not define the character.
Right.
Exactly.
I definitely agree. The lightsaber does not make the person the Force user. It's just fun.
Right. Although Obi-Wan would say, "This weapon is your life."
He is right in some respects.
Well, I mean, like the whole Luke has a lot of like opinions about not only the old Jedi but Obi-Wan now. Like,
yeah, he does have a few direct lines to criticize.
There is like a direct line where he like blames Obi-Wan for everything that happened. So.
Right.
Yeah, and then Rey quickly snaps back at him, saying, "Also the one who saved you,"
which is interesting.
Right.
That like kind of come away from like worshiping Obi-Wan.
I will take my time now to state before we like dive in a lot more to Luke, especially because of the more interesting parts of this podcast. I will say the only reason I could not see this movie any higher, and again, I can defend my opinions and I'll defend until I die. They ruined Luke, and I hate that.
Well, we'll definitely talk about that because that's going to be a big thing to talk about. Kenny, if you could get a little bit closer to your microphone, you're just a little bit quiet.
Yeah, sorry, is that a little better?
Yeah, it's better. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't want to have my rage pour through my voice, so I stepped back.
Oh, yes, don't want to channel the dark side too much.
That's all right. The other podcast I've been listening to is like suss out opinions about this movie. One of them spent like an hour screaming into the mics about something that we'll talk about later.
That is... I can see that happening. Not with us, but with other people. I can totally see
that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. Like, seeing Luke throw the lightsaber over his shoulder is definitely, I think, establishing the kind of where Rian Johnson is taking this movie and subverting your expectations, and Luke is not the grand master that we thought he might be. Although, obviously, you knew that he had to have been in a strange mental place to be putting himself on this island and abandoning his sister and abandoning the fight and all that stuff. So this was Rian Johnson's answer to why he was there. He had come here to die, to let the Jedi Order end, and all of that stuff. Which you could immediately, I was starting to clue in, especially on my second viewing, that he says all that, but he's clearly half-hearted about it, because if he really wanted to die, then he would have just killed himself. But he doesn't, because he doesn't, there's still a part of the true Luke, the old Luke, is still in there.
That is definitely true. Like, that's one thing I will give Rian Johnson props for is, though I disagree fundamentally what they did with Luke, they did commit to this old grouchy Luke who's clearly needs somebody to crack him out of his shell. Like, they definitely did stick to it, and they did not waver. They didn't try to write like 15 different people in his head. No, they stuck to a consistent theme, which I can't give them that. They at least buckled down with the broken master character, even further down the lot than like Obi-Wan turned out being this time around. And again, I will give them points for sticking to the script.
Actually, if it makes you feel any better, Kenny, Mark Hamill also
he does. That's why I know I'm right.
Agrees with you, which actually is like a lot of like critics of like a lot of fans who really hate this movie took that as like the consent to go ahead and hate Luke's interpretation in this movie.
Unfortunately, Mark Hamill's also there for a lot of the beautiful things they did with Luke, and he's also the character. So I totally, I don't like have his opinion way mine. I had before I even heard his stuff. I totally agree with everything like he says. Like one of his quotes said, like, if you're going in here expecting them to like fulfill your childhood dreams, you're going to go disappointed. And that's true, because Rian Johnson does go his own direction, which I respect, but it's obviously not going to go the way you think.
Right?
Yeah.
So Luke does put a
thing.
Right. Well, and although I will counter that and say I've seen interviews with Mark Hamill where he's talking about how that was his initial reaction, that he fundamentally disagreed with what Rian Johnson was doing, but he talked with him and he debated with him and he trusted Rian Johnson's direction, and now that he sees like where the full arc was going, he can understand it more and kind of see I was wrong to doubt him. I saw an interview where he basically said that.
Well, like I said,
Right.
I think Mark may have come to the same conclusion I have, which is like they committed to this character of Luke and stuck with it, and it was consistent enough where I can respect the storytelling like element of it, but I still don't agree with what they did. So I can respect it, but I don't agree.
Right. Well, yeah, I figured maybe instead of like jumping back and forth between all the different scenes as the movie progresses, let's just kind of talk about the segments. So let's talk here about Rey and Luke on the island. What we thought of how that story progressed with him eventually starting to teach her the lessons and him seeing R2 and those sorts of things.
Oh, Andrew, you're gonna go first. I won't stop you.
Okay, fine. So we talk a lot about like remembering Star Wars. Like, there's a lot of scenes in both Force Awakens and in Rogue One, which are like just exist only so that they feed your nostalgia boner. So they're like, remember this scene from Star Wars? Remember this like thing from Star Wars? Those two movies are extremely guilty of that, to the point where like they spend a lot of sequences just bending over backwards to reference 4, 5, 6. I feel like 8. Well, there's a lot of times that it did that. Some of them worked really well. The sequence where R2 shows him Leia's recording from episode 4 was
Good stuff.
great. I actually think that genuinely works. It's a good character moment. It's literally the only thing R2 does in the entire movie.
Yep. Sadly,
You're part of the Wills, buddy.
I wish that R2 had gone to do more, because I really like that scene, because when Luke sees him, you see that, oh, R2, my buddy, you know?
Yeah, even 3PO did more than he did. That was just talking, but still, that was weird.
By the way, all of the 3PO scenes were like, all of the 3PO lines were like perfect 3PO lines that I like adore.
Wipe that, like, was it worried look off your face?
Wipe that worried look off your
look.
face. That's great. That line's great. What's the other 3PO line that I was thinking? That was like, man, that is just so classic 3PO. But I love Luke's interactions with like the original trilogy, like cast members. Like when Chewie breaks down the door, and he's like, Chewie, what are you doing here? The ending with I know we're jumping ahead, but like the ending with him and Leia and the wink to 3PO, because Luke has always been the one person that like treated 3PO with like respect and dignity. Everybody just constantly berates 3PO for being irritating, but Luke has always like kind of liked him.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely something to that. Personally, for me, I really like 3PO's line on Crate where he was giving the statistic and Poe trying to shut him up, and he just went 2-1. He's
bad.
Snuck that in there. That was good.
Yeah, one more. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to agree with you, Andrew. One of the more powerful moments for me that I really, really liked, was when, speaking of 3PO, like when he did see Luke, like you said, that interaction, just the Master Luke, and he just nods at 3PO.
Yeah,
like that just hit. It just shows nothing needed to be said on Luke's part. He just saw like it's Luke, he's back, and everybody. I mean, there was a sense of like purpose. Never knew what was happening. Even 3PO was like the only one that would talk after Leia. So.
Right. Yeah.
But so I think that sequence really works. Although in this part of the movie, we have the two most unnecessary scenes in the entire Star Wars saga ever committed to film that have not been deleted.
The dumbest scene was in this movie, yeah. Even worse than Rogue, I would say that.
Let me have a guess. I think you're going to talk about some green milk.
Yeah, we are.
No, actually, that's fine in comparison. The green milk I missed the first time. I walked out to use the bathroom because I was on medication and really had to pee, and I missed that scene. And Andrew and Kyle told me you missed probably the most worthless scene in all of Star Wars, and I enjoyed that 10 times more than the scene I'm thinking.
All right.
What scene are you thinking about? That's what I was thinking about.
I mean, let's put it in perspective, guys. I would rather be in a pit of gun darks with nothing but not even a scene, just me and my piece of my way to watch freaking Leia use the Force to fly back into
yeah. We're going to talk about that because that's actually like a major plot point in this movie. Because the green milk thing is, it's not necessary to the plot. This movie is 2.5 hours long.
But that scene, like, that's the integral important thing we're supposed to like. And,
Right. Well, the thing with the green milk scene, though, I mean, clearly it's supposed to go to the okay, we're shattering your expectations for what this is going to be. Luke has kind of like this weird existence on this island, but I think they got you worried with that. Then they immediately followed up with him going to the giant stick and stabbing the fish, which I thought was a really cool scene. So
No, I don't need that either. Like, I don't need either of those scenes. It's like a weird like Yoda thing where he's like living in this place doing weird things to like gross people out.
Like, you don't think that gross ass stew. Same time they're gonna eat your sausages, I'm gonna scream, and I'm a Jedi Master. And he's still gonna ask Reed about it, but he start.
Right.
I mean, that's true.
Well, I had this thought the other day. What if you watched the films 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? So you saw the prequel Yoda first, where he's this wise grandmaster, a warrior, and then you come to episode 5, where he's going, and walking around and playing with Luke's stuff. You might have a similar reaction to what we're having to Luke here.
That's fair, but like,
true, but
it's still.
not. I feel like they would have done it differently if they'd made the movies 1, 2, 3, then 5,
I mean, it's still like not necessary to this extremely long movie that like
It is
like
Yes.
clearly has other things cut out of it that probably were more valuable.
Like,
to
you're
the
right, it
movie.
does go by faster the second time, but that's see, now that I watched it, I definitely say it was not necessary. It's pretty much for the punchline of, you've not doing anything around here, I've seen your daily routine. Like, when she's talking about, like, you have plenty of time to train. So.
There is one thing that I respect about it is that like it shows that Luke is like kind of living harmoniously within nature, which is like a very Jedi Force-y thing to do, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna live like as one with my surroundings. Like, I'm gonna rely on the land, and it's a whole thing like that, but it's not.
Right.
It still doesn't need to be in this movie.
Right. For me, the scene with Chewie, I agree, I like that. But then Luke ended it with, wait, where's Han? Because he could, where was Han? And I got a little worried there because I thought, oh, surely Luke is going to sense Han's death from across the galaxy because Leia did. But then later it's revealed he cut himself off from the Force. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that explains
So I was wondering,
it.
I thought the end of 7 was him reacting to it. That's a lot of people theorized. They thought it might be a grave he's sitting next to for Han, but that made sense when they pointed that out. Because I was wondering the same thing. Like, did he not sense it?
Right. And
But,
so, yes, after the scene with R2, we get into the lessons. And I definitely liked in Lesson 1 how he did his own version of teaching Rey the Force. And we had all those cuts to, like, life, death, warmth, cold. I thought that was an effective scene.
Yeah, that was fun. Because again, like humor, I actually thought it was pretty on point for a lot of it, and I did enjoy. First of all, the reaching out the Force, like you said, it's like you feel that, and smacked her because she actually reached out, which shows how like Rey understands like fully that she doesn't know anything, and Luke sees that, but obviously being the hard teacher he is, he's going to punish her for it because he's not going to give her any grief because he's like, you bothered me, so I'm going to make your life hell.
Yeah.
And again,
True.
establishes his crotchety old character, the fact that she even admits, like, I don't know anything. So she's willing to try anything to feel the Force and will like immediately fit into it because she doesn't know what it is.
Right.
I actually do like think a lot of like, so upon rewatch, and I read like a lot of like analyses and like things because like my first time through, I'm like, so Rey still doesn't have a character, like a real like character arc or like flaws or anything. And then like I read a bunch of things that I like really thought about her character, and I came to the conclusion that she does. It's just like kind of understated. She's just super prepared to like take anything that comes her way. She's just like, I just want to be this great person. She's like, I've always felt something inside me, and that I just knew that I wanted to be like this great, profound person, but I just didn't know how. I just need somebody to tell me. I need somebody to tell me what I'm supposed to do that is great and profound. And her whole arc of this movie is realizing that only you can tell you what like is great and profound,
Right.
like what you could do, which is great. That's actually like ties into the reveal about her parents, which we'll talk about later. But
Right. That's what I was just gonna say. I think her flaw is less like a physical skill that she's struggling to master or something like that, and more like she just feels completely alone, both with her family and then also like not knowing what to do with this crazy Force thing that's happened to her, and she kind of learns to kind of accept that, like you say, and like I'm charting my own path kind of thing, and I do have my belonging with Finn and the Resistance and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely shows like what you guys are saying there. Like with the reason she's so like doggedly determined is the fact that she feels like she can't fail or she's not gonna be worth anything. Like you say, like she, has a feeling that she will fall into like vague obscurity, so she has to keep herself
right. And so it's around here. Or it's actually a little bit before this, but whatever. We get the first of the Rey Kylo connections in the Force.
Yes. Probably the best scenes in Acts 1 and 2 of this movie. Also, real quick, I know before we move on, I want to touch on the best interpretation, both visually and spoken, of the Force I've ever seen put to screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that sequence is great.
I don't know. It's not quite luminous beings are we not this crude matter, but it was good.
But yes, best scenes, Kylo and Rey, love every one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely like the Rey and Kylo scenes, and at first it was like you were like, wait, is this what they're doing? You know, with like how they were cutting back and forth between them, like, you know, who can see Kylo? Wait, Luke can't see Kylo because he just walked out and like pointed at the blaster hole in the wall. So it established different things, but then like Kylo had the rainwater on his glove after he talked to Rey the second time.
There's a lot of like the Force like physically moving or creating matter in this movie, which is like something that like the new EU books touch on a little bit. That they're trying to like push it in that direction. Like the whole like there was a whole point in one of the books, I don't remember which one, I think it was like Tarkin or one of the earlier ones, where the Emperor now just wanted to create a self-sustaining empire by the point of the original trilogy, so that he and Vader could go off and like explore the weird places of the Force and like see if they can change and create like matter and change reality and all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know that they've made Palpatine obsessed with the unknown regions in the new canon.
They have. That was a whole bit. Which they were implying for a while that maybe Luke was also starting to become obsessed with that. Right before he, like all the backstory to these movies went down.
Right.
And that he was looking into the same thing.
Right.
But nothing apparently comes to that. So, or like it will be, but it will all just be like background.
Right.
Yeah, because they talked about it before with the new canon. Like Luke's really interested in an Imperial observation post that they're working on.
Yeah.
So the Emperor very obsessed with something out there.
Right. So then we get to the second lesson, and there was a couple things I did definitely like about it. I guess this is from the first, but where he said, you know, that like you feel that the Force is everywhere. How much hubris could you possibly have to think that the Jedi own the Force? You know, so if the Jedi are gone, it doesn't mean the Force is gone or that the light side is gone. And then in that second scene, he talks about, you know, how the hubris of the Jedi and in the height of their power, they fell to Darth Sidious. Nice getting his name mentioned. You know, that Obi-Wan trained Darth Vader and let Darth
literally
Vader turn
calls
evil.
Obi-Wan out.
Right. Although I took that less as like Obi-Wan specifically like failing and more just like an example of how the Jedi messed up.
This is also where I believe this is no, this is where we get the first flashback. That happens later, right?
No, you're right. That's where we see the first one from Luke's perspective.
Yeah.
And we get his initial interpretation of it.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Yes.
That whole bit. A certain point of view. Yes. First off, I want to talk about like a picture I saw, because like it's never actually shown in the movie, but that like pool that they are like resting by under like the top of that mountain with the mural of the first Jedi.
Right.
Which we never like see a shot of, like a clear shot of in the movie, which I think is unfortunate, because I saw a picture of it and A, looks great, and B, a lot of people were like theorizing that it was going to turn out that Snoke was the first Jedi.
Ugh, gosh, people.
Which I actually thought that would be neat, because the movie's called The Last Jedi, and it would be cool if The Last Jedi was fighting the first Jedi.
Yeah, but that would mean Snoke would literally have to be like tens of thousands of years old. So I'm not sure how I
mean,
feel
Didn't they
about
establish
that.
he's like thousands of years old though? He's supposed to be like really. Old.
They have established nothing about him, and now it doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
now they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I called it, but we're gonna talk about that in a little bit.
Yes, we'll get there. I would agree. I wish that they had given us like a nice shot of that mural thing. Although I could see that it's kind of like a yin yang thing. Half of it was white, half of his back, but there was a spot of white and a spot of black on each opposite side.
It was. It was very much a yin yang thing, which I liked. I thought it was very neat looking. It really fits with the whole motif. It actually tells the story of a Jedi order that was established exploring both ends of the Force, and at some point they divide it into these two separate things. Yeah, like when they left Typhon, which I don't think is a thing anymore.
Get Force, man.
Right. And so we're going to talk about the flashback scene in a little bit because that's very important, obviously.
Yes.
But it's after she sees that from Kylo that she goes to the dark side hole that she had seen and finds
the dark hole.
Right, and
dark
finds
hole.
The mirror,
the cave from Empire Strikes Back.
No, that'd be silly. They wouldn't do that again.
Right. No, this is clearly their analogy for the cave.
It is, but it does like some very different things with the setup, which I kind of appreciate.
Yes, it was different enough. It's the same kind of pitch, but it was executed in a different manner. And I did enjoy that. Visually, it was very stunning. I did like the way they actually presented it.
It's a gorgeous shot. I actually there's a lot of all the analyses that I read. I've actually come away with a lot from that scene.
One thing it's actually Andrew, you pointed out too, and I thought the same thing, but you put it to words before I did. And I definitely think going back to what we were talking about a few seconds with Luke, I definitely say now if I ever need to reference what the Force is for somebody, I think this movie has the best interpretation I've heard, and really, and it was anything Star Wars. When Luke explains the ebb and flow of the Force, how it flows through everything, and how there's always that balance of light and dark, and really just dives into what the living Force is. And when Rey's feeling it, so I feel cold, I feel heat, I feel light, I feel dark. That whole scene, I would show to somebody this is the Force, and they do such a good job explaining that.
Adore that sequence.
That was beautifully well done. It truly shows that Rian Johnson, people who wrote this, had a very good understanding of the Force, and my respect for them did really bolster when I heard that scene.
I would agree with that as well. I think that he that proves that he understands Star Wars in a way that I feel like we generally think of Star Wars we're on the same page, which is
yes. And I love that. So talking about that, especially when she goes to the dark, the interpretation they have of temptation was really cool. When he was you went right for the dark, and he didn't even hesitate. And I was he's not wrong, but at the same time, he himself was just preaching out there his balance. I thought that was cool to see him immediately get mad about it and Rey trying to defend herself.
Well, I actually have a thing about that sequence because Luke is actively scared of it because it's a mirror, and Luke is actively scared at looking inwards of himself again. He refuses to look at his own actions again.
It takes the whole movie to break through that, which is cool. They actually build up and just burst out.
He's scared of a mirror, and she went to the dark side looking for answers, and that's just how the dark side works, is it promises you all these things that it never quite delivers. It never will fulfill that promise. She came there looking for answers for her parents, and she only found herself. She found the person that will give her a driving force forward, will drive her character arc forward, which is herself, but it also doesn't give her the answer she was actually looking for, which I think is brilliant. I think that the whole bit is fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. But Andrew, you're missing the clear fact that those two shadowy forms of her parents merged into herself, meaning that she was conceived from the Force like Anakin Skywalker.
No, she wasn't. That is not what happened.
Allegory.
That is not what happened at all. Is the dark side tricking her and doing that thing that the dark side does?
I'm just saying, guys, everyone knows for a fact is given the Sarlacc as her mother and father, it's great. She came out of the Sarlacc of all the collected those have been killed and condemned up there in Jakku, and it makes sense.
Well,
don't worry about it.
But I'm curious how you put this into your interpretation, though, because it didn't trick her. It showed her the truth. It just wasn't the truth she wanted to see.
This isn't going to turn out the way you think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? It's how the dark side works. The dark side promises you the world, and somehow you never end up with it at the end.
Right. No, there's some truth to that. And so then that leads us into the scene with Kylo and Rey, which was very good and very intimate with them, connecting with each other and reaching
And
out
then
their
Luke comes
hands.
in. He's like, "You can't take my daughter." And like,
It
breaks
really,
the heart.
like, not trying to like knock a very dramatic and genuinely well
It was
written
just
scene,
so funny how
but
he was
like
literally an angry dad in that scene.
there is like a weird element of like Kylo and Rey being like two like teenagers that are trying to date, and both of their fathers are like not happy about it.
Oh, I mean, one father is totally happy about it. The other dad is like, "I'm gonna break the house."
No, one father like is like, yes, bring her over for
Date the rich
dinner.
girl. I would love to
Please
date
do.
her. It's like, that kid's an asshole. Forget him. He broke my house and killed my kids. Which
Yeah.
I'd be mad. I mean, really
Right.
fair.
Well,
At the same time, that scene, it seemed kind of silly to me when he was like, "Ouch, get away from her."
right. Well, I guess I did like that though, just because we got to see Luke use the Force, and he did like a little Force push, and the whole house breaks apart. So that was cool.
Yes. And we get to see the first time he actually used the Force in a big manner was out in Malice. So he was fueling into the dark. Yeah,
Right.
just
Right. Although, but technically before that, we saw him connect to Leia, so that was his first use of the
that's true.
Force.
I mean, the first like bombastic thing, like when he actually with Rey saw it, was I would argue.
I forgot about this earlier, but I thought I should mention it. When she connected with Kylo before, she asked him, "Why did you do it? Why did you kill your father?" And I wish I wish that he had answered, because that would have been interesting. But I like that he said, "I didn't hate him."
Which is actually funny because it actually runs counter to what he says in Episode 7, because he like turns to Rey, is like, "Oh, you think of Han Solo as your father? Well, he would have been a disappointment."
Right.
Like,
well, yeah, I mean, clearly he's mad at Han Solo, but
that's not he wasn't like conflicted because he could be as over the top as he wanted. Like, "Oh yeah, I hate my dad, whatever." But after he kills him, that's when he has the split where he's like,
yeah, he does have like the
actually,
feeling like, I didn't actually hate him that much.
But now he's
right.
I actually feel like we skipped over like a very vital part of the Kylo Ren arc that like we're running up against right now, which is that first scene with him.
Oh yeah.
In like Snoke's throne room.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that now, because I'm sure you guys sympathize with me here, given that you had some criticisms of Force Awakens. But I love that Snoke, threw him under the bus, like, you got bested by a girl who could barely hold a lightsaber.
Yeah, Rian Johnson made some statements we all thought, and I'm really happy he did, because it's a fair point. He explains it away too, how powerful they are in the Force, and this movie does retroactively make that whole fight scene better for me.
I agree. I actually think that like it's almost like Rian Johnson or Snoke read the internet comments after The Force Awakens, like, yes, exactly that. Which is great because it actually starts Kylo Ren on a path where he's like, all right, I'm going to take this more seriously now. I'm gonna like stop, messing around. I'm gonna like just full on, like, just kill everything. Like,
before he was
kill everyone.
That was again. He could just conveniently hate his father until he's able to kill him and failed, and he was humbled.
I think it was the moment where he decided that he needed to kill Snoke, and he just like needed to find a way to do it.
Yeah, because you see him smashing the helmet because the conflict is still tearing him apart.
Yes.
That, like, kills the that's one thing I like too about him is he's not comparing himself to Vader anymore. It's Snoke, and like this may be me jumping ahead a little bit, but I do like to think like his metaphoric and physical way of killing the idea that he's ever going to be a new Vader is him smashing that helmet and be like, no, I'm making my new empire, I'm making myself, and I'm going to take him.
I agree, but he's still, like, via his character arc, he's still not strong enough to kill his mom.
No, absolutely not.
So, like, over the course of the movie, he has to, like, become more resolute via talking to Rey. Like, Rey is the one who, like, in a way inspires him to commit to this darker path, which is funny because she actually accuses Luke of that, like in the scene we were mounting up to, where she's like, "Did you make Kylo Ren?" And in a way, she actually made him better.
He did.
Right. Well, so I'll say for me, I also love that scene where he said, take that silly thing off, that ridiculous thing off with the mask, so it's like, yeah, he's calling him out for being the wannabe Darth Vader. And he's like, but, I thought I saw greatness in you, but you're not there. You're not what I wanted you to be. But personally, I think he was certainly pissed at Snoke in that scene, and he force lightninged him, which was cool. But I don't think he was actually actively thinking of betraying Snoke until the throne room scene when he realized Snoke had manipulated him.
Well, I mean, he tries to kill Snoke in that first scene. Like that's why he
No.
found. That's why he does the big shot with the lightning.
He was. I think he was good. He was angry at Snoke. He was gonna like try something, but he was not.
Hatred.
Right. He was lashing out, but killing him that's something else.
Which actually I think was Snoke. Like I don't know. Like I've actually thought about this because in the end of Force Awakens, Snoke's like, "Come, bring him to me. We will finish his training." And I was wondering, like. So was the finishing of the training just like to make him mad, just to like make him actually like really tap into the dark side by like berating him in front of everybody and making fun of him? Like is that the plan here?
Well, later in the movie, when he has Rey in front of Kylo, he says, "Where I once saw weakness, now I see resolve. Now take your saber and complete your training." Basically killing Rey would be completing his training.
Your destiny. That's one of the coolest aspects too. I know we discussed, Andrew, that I really like is it shows how the Force, as powerful a movie as it is, can be interpreted just like any like prophecy any way you want. Because like the way it worked, like with both, like you see with like Rey and Kylo, they both interpreted like I'm going to be able to turn this other one of them to my side. They both were right. They were trying to turn. They both came together, but it was not the way they thought. Again, Luke put it best. This will not end up the way you think. Same with Snoke, where he sees the saber about to go in, but he just doesn't know who. He had full resolution. He's going to kill someone. Full that he's going to get revenge, and full idea that he was going to change the course of history. And Snoke saw all of that. Just he interpreted because the dark corrupted him so much. He was like, yeah, no, of course he's going to. I can't be betrayed. And again, his hubris feeds into it too. But the Force can be interpreted any way you want. That's the thing. If you want it enough, it will be the way you would like.
Right.
True.
Well,
it's going to turn out that way.
I just saw something on the Star Wars Reddit that I thought was good. It actually referenced Rogue One. Chirrut, when he was talking about Cassian, he said that the Force swirls darkly around someone with the intent to kill or something like that. And so the thinking was, well, so Kylo definitely had the intent to kill there, and Snoke could sense that, but he couldn't sense who it was towards, necessarily.
Well, I thought he said that you'll never be Kyle Katarn and you ruined that movie. Did I hear that differently? Oh my god, I'm sorry, I should have watched that.
You should. Apparently, Chirrut's staff is like made out of the same wood as that tree that they have all those books in.
Really?
Yeah, that's like a thing.
Oh, that's a nice little detail.
That's cool.
But yes, let's dive back to the Luke Rey Island storyline because we have the key moment where she says, "Yes, did you do it? Did you create Kylo Ren?" And we see the full version of that flashback of Luke turning on the saber over Kylo. What did you guys think of that? Was that like something that you could conceivably see Luke Skywalker doing?
I will fully admit, and I'll say this first, that is the only time in the movie I whispered, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm not kidding. I actually did almost walk out of the theater. The only reason I stopped is because I was like, I have to see the rest because this is so, that's when I realized they ruined Luke. And I'm like, this is so dumb. And I did almost leave because it was so poorly done.
All right, Andrew?
I hated that.
So, all right, I am conflicted about this sequence as well. Because a lot of the things that Kenny says are true, and they do ring true to me, is that Luke wouldn't do that.
Even divorcing yourself from the old EU, this just doesn't make sense.
But, I mean, I guess, like, what they're trying to say is that over the course of the 30 years, or however long it was to that point, like, over the course, like, after 6, like, even Luke had kind of, like, started to buy into his own hype, and that he was like, I actually am that good. I did like totally redeem Vader. I could totally trade this kid, like even though this kid's like angry and is like got magic powers and likes to kill puppies in the back yard and torture squirrels and whatever.
Right.
Like that's kind of what's happening, right? Like where he's just like he's one of those kids that like show like early signs of being like a psychopath.
Well,
and
I have not read Bloodline or many of the other books, but has it actually been said that Kylo was or that Ben had those sorts of tendencies before he started training?
Yeah, they didn't really touch on it a lot.
Well, I mean, the long hair, the tight outfits, it says for itself.
They didn't touch on it a lot in Bloodline. It was like I didn't read it, but like listened to a podcast like where they not like talked about it for a long period of time. Yeah, they don't really talk. They don't talk about it. that much.
The biggest tell for how insane he was is his propensity to kill old men.
Yeah, he just did that a lot. Except he did blow up an entire hangar full of like X-wing fighters in this one, so I guess he did something right.
Yeah, because shielding apparently still isn't a thing with these things. That bothers me so much. They literally have to collect shielding 4 vessels like that. Star Wars, come on, get it consistent.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we're never gonna have that.
So for me, when we saw the scene for the first time where Luke had, well, it was Kylo's version of it. So Luke looked like crazy angry, and he had the saber coming down. I thought it was cool to see the green lightsaber because, of course, everyone wanted to see that, but that certainly wasn't how I had expected to see it.
Yeah.
And I had a discussion with a friend of mine out here in LA yesterday about the movie, and he wasn't a huge fan, and he asked me, do you really think that the Luke Skywalker that you know, that you love, who wouldn't kill his father even though he had done all these terrible things, would really consider killing his own nephew even for a second?
He wouldn't.
And I agree with what Andrew's saying, because when he was earlier in the movie, he talked about, because I was Luke Skywalker, a legend. I agree. I think he did kind of buy into his own hype a bit, and got maybe overconfident and thought that he could succeed where the past Jedi had failed and all that stuff. And I like Mark Hamill's delivery in that scene where he's like talking very fast about how he's seeing this vision, and he knew that he could feel that Snoke had done it to him, and he saw all this terrible things that he was going to do, and in a moment of pure instinct, he ignited the saber and then immediately felt shame, but was left with the fatal consequences. So I like the mythic aspect of that. Like, if he hadn't done it, would Kylo have turned? Yes, no. It's a classic mythological question. But I think that we needed more. We needed a little bit more time in that flashback to really understand where Luke's mindset was at that time and what he had seen of him and Snoke. And I need more build up to really fully buy that Luke would be in this place where he would make that decision.
So, okay, go ahead, Kenny.
I was gonna say just real quick. I'd almost say a counter argument. Like, if he believed he was literally the bee's knees, then Luke wouldn't kill him. He's like, I can make this kid. Like, I know he's corrupt, but I would not give up there. Like, Luke, we know, is resolute and understood the old ways that Jedi were. At the end of episode 6, he realized how much of a shame they were. He's turned to a living weapon and realized that's not the way you're supposed to go. He learned that when he didn't kill his dad and when he threw out the Emperor. Like, he would have gone every step of the way to save this kid. If he realized Snoke had already failed him, then, again, not even going to old EU stuff, he would confront Snoke. He wouldn't kill the kid. It's not his fault. It's Snoke. So he'd approach him or have a battle of wills over this kid's mind and, talk to him, like, Ben, what's wrong with you? Just talk to the damn kid. Don't kill him. And in that pure mode of instinct, that's BS. He wouldn't whip out the saber. He'd wake up Ben and be like, something's wrong with you. I feel the dark within you. My father felt this too. I know you have my bloodline. We need to get this done. We need to confront Snoke. And if you don't think you're strong enough, then I'm going to have to do it myself. I don't know if I can trust seeing you out, so I'm going to have the other students watch you. And have some way of training. And again, a battle of wills made more sense, not a saber. Like, actually trying to go into his mind, because we clearly established this new canon. You can dive, and old canon, dive into people's minds, see their true intentions, and see that the light is still in there. And if Rey can stoke it so easily, Luke could have done it so much more so, being related to him. And that's just, even their own, build up for it is just too weak of a, foundation to, support it.
All right, Andrew?
So I, watched it again, really thinking about it. I agree with what Kenny says, and I actually would have I feel like and I agree with what you say, Alex, too, because I feel like there is so little context for what was going on at that point. Why wasn't he confronting Snoke? Why was he just yeah, Snoke had already gotten to him? I'm well, what does that mean? Does that mean that Snoke? How does that whole thing work? I agree. I think that a better scene would have been had Luke failed to save Kylo from Snoke in a battle of the wills, and that after that he's yeah, I couldn't save him, that now I'm gonna resign myself.
And maybe Snoke, he found out Snoke was too powerful, and that could have shattered his trust. I can't beat Snoke. I beat him.
Can't.
How can I lose?
Yeah, how did I lose? How did I lose that much? But I guess then more people would complain because it's well, now Luke just ran away instead of living with his own failure. But either way it would have worked, because the central message is that Luke failed. I got the sense that he had gone there to confront Ben and to talk to him, you said, Kenny, he's gonna do I'm gonna sense the darkness within you. But he walks up, and you in the movie there you could hear people screaming and lightsabers being activated and striking things. And I guess Luke in that moment, walking to that hut, he realized that he was like dreaming of like murdering all of his students, all the other students, and joining the dark side, and like, yes, this is exactly what I want. And just for like a second, he was like, I could just stop this right now. I could like not have the same thing that happens to the old Jedi Order happen to it, and I could not fail bringing the Jedi back like I'm supposed to, like everybody wants me to. And just for that second, he has it, and then he like, no, I need to be better than this. I'm better than this. I'm going to talk to him, but it was too late, and he like woke up because lightsabers are loud, and if somebody activated a lightsaber right next to my head, I'd wake up too. So, I mean, I understand that like he shouldn't, like it's not
Like
a
he learned
great
less than
interpretation.
5. You can't just strike out and like lash out in anger. He knows that like lashing out how dangerous that is.
Yeah,
Again, he learned that years ago.
Right. Well, so here's what I'll add to this. I would agree with Andrew. He didn't lash out though. He had the moment of fear and paranoia got to him, and he activated it and immediately regretted it.
And how the heck can I believe he's a Jedi Master if he can't control himself like that? They ruined it.
And a second point to maybe if we're not going with the idea that he was like he was believing his own hype, as it were, maybe that was like the exterior he put on, but on the inside he was really unsure about himself. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't have Yoda or Ben here to guide me. And I'm assuming that he did have conversations with Kylo and that he saw hints of darkness and like what Kylo was doing during their training, and he had talked to him about it, but it just wasn't getting better. I can definitely believe that all that stuff happened. And that Luke really was like on the inside very paranoid and very concerned about Kylo being a new Vader because of the bloodline and because of all that power he had within him, and being paranoid of him failing like Obi-Wan did in the past and like not allowing a second Jedi purge to happen. So I can also buy that angle for it, but I think the movie needed to tell me that. I can't. It's bad that I'm having to theorize about it.
They'd really have to like really, really show me, like convince me, because I can never be convinced really. And I think it was bad.
Know that there was like a half hour of this movie that was cut. I would love to like know if there was more to that sequence, or maybe eventually there will. If not, eventually there will be a book like about it that will detail everything that happened there. And I would love to like. I hope that they hand that off to like a really good writer that can like maybe like retroactively like fix this point. Because it is definitely like a lower point in this movie to me. I struggle to be as angry with it as Kenny is, because like I think the payoff in the third act and the fourth act, if we want to be real here, is so good that it's like I don't know if it's worth it, but like it's like such a good ending to this movie that I think that it like retroactively helps that like almost justify that scene.
Yeah, I will say I saw just an article recently about deleted scenes from the movie. Rian Johnson was having an interview about it. Apparently, there's quite a bit of Finn, Rose, and Benicio del Toro on the Star Destroyer that got cut off. But
actually, I needed those scenes more than I needed the Canto Bite scenes. So,
but they also said that there was another scene of training between Luke and Rey that was cut. So very curious to see what that was.
I would also like that.
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, and I'll just end it off this section here by saying that personally, I can buy that Luke would do the action he did there. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it on principle. I just need more for me to truly buy it. That's my stance on it. What follows this scene, though, is a scene I think we can all appreciate, which was where we finally got to see Yoda after all the rumors that he was going to be in this movie as a Force ghost.
Yeah.
I will say the scene was too long with Yoda. I would have preferred. Yeah, I'm definitely glad he was there. I'm glad he showed up. And Claire and I talked about it. And I think a better way of doing that scene, which it would have been like more of a somber, subtle thing instead of having Yoda just shove in your face, like, remember Star Wars. I think it'd be better if like Luke had burned it down, got like resolute himself, and as it like pulled out, just seeing Yoda there as a Force ghost nodding, and that's it. I don't think he needed to talk.
I disagree. I think we needed to talk.
I really don't think so.
I mean, I like a lot of his dialogue there, though. Like,
It's good, but it's not needed.
I mean, I agree that like if you want to be if you're doing like the like minimalist like simple thing, then sure, yeah,
I like
it's
minimalist.
neat
That's just
that.
a better taste. Like we already had enough stuff shoved in our face. Like I don't need Yoda. To
But
be
like
shoved in our face.
I feel like his sequence, the things that Yoda says are like vital to like finishing Luke's arc, because Luke was like that's the last time we see him until Crate, and uh, I don't feel like I wasn't sold on his arc, like because Rey leaves him much like he left Yoda on Dagobah, and he's just feeling like, oh, I failed her too, just like I failed Ben. I've like haven't succeeded in anything. Like I've like not. He's not yet come back around. That like no, I need to let go. Also, you can't like. There's no way. Like people would not sit for like Yoda just like showing up in the background, Kenny. Like they would not be like a
Right.
like that would not.
I think
fly.
it'd be better because that can almost be Luke finding the strength in himself, like looking back at Yoda maybe and just like looking at him. They have like a moment where they lock eyes. Like I don't think it needs to say anything. I just be like, just the
like,
sight alone could bring that to Luke. Like Luke's like,
feel
yeah,
like,
that's what I need to do. I need to get out there and help her.
I don't feel like he. I wasn't sold on his arc until that sequence. Until Yoda's like the last.
I mean, I'm not sold on his arc at all. So my investment level in Luke was already very low at that point.
Right.
I mean,
So I'm a bad source for this.
There we go.
But I also disagree with Yoda.
I'll lay out my opinion here. Personally, I like that he said to Yoda, like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to burn it, and he got up to it, and then he hesitated. Because, like I said, Luke is half-hearted. He's come here to kill him, for him to die, for the Jedi to end, but in truth, he doesn't really want to do it. He knows that there's still a purpose to the Jedi and a purpose to him, or at least that's what he thinks. And then it was definitely interesting seeing Yoda doing it, displaying a power we've never seen from a Force Ghost before. But it's mythological, calling down lightning, so I kind of liked it. And I liked what Yoda said, oh, Skywalker, you're still the same, never focused on what's in front of your nose, always looking to the sky, and then him saying, remember what I taught you, pass on what you have learned, strength, mastery, but failure. Yes, failure is the greatest teacher of all. And I think that a major theme of this movie is failure and growing from failure. Yeah. And so I think that was a really important line that Yoda said.
I'll let you, buddy. I already got my opinions.
Fair.
Yeah. And then I also like Yoda's line after that where he said, they are what we grow, they grow beyond us. That is the strength that is the life of all true masters. I forget the quote, but I like that too.
I mean, okay, I'll admit, like, when Yoda did talk, like, he had, like, the failure line really did stick with me. Like, I get that it helps Luke's arc. I think it's just, I don't know, maybe, okay, this is going to sound, like, kind of, like, selfish in the old series, but I just respect Luke so much. I almost wanted to find something himself, and I feel like every step of the way he just needs somebody else. I just really wanted that to be Luke's moment where he did it himself.
I mean,
that may sound unfair, but that's just where I was standing.
I mean, I could see that because, like, the whole thing, the whole lesson.
So broken. I'm like, where's your strength left, Luke? Like, I get you don't need to show up there. I almost felt like R2 is a better source for that, like, kicking his face and doing it.
R2 did a great job.
I liked R2. That was
early
very
sequence. And I agree because like episode 6 is like about Luke like going his own way, like not conforming to the views of the Jedi, and he's like, no, I'm going to be my own person, and I'm going to not listen to Yoda, and I'm going to not listen to Obi-Wan, and I'm going to save my father instead of killing him like you keep telling me to do.
Yeah, and I apologize, guys. I didn't sound as angry as I did. It's just that was it. Really, just I love Luke so much. I just hate to see him so broken. I just want to see him. And the end does give him that. I admit, when he does go to everybody, he does kind of get his redemption over there. And it's a very, very good scene. Him and Kylo scene is.
Right. I love that. That part's like that's what I'm saying. Like that payoff is.
The payoff
so
is very
good.
Like I said, I still stand by what I said earlier. While I fundamentally disagree with what they did wrong with Luke, I respect what they did, and the payoff it made me respect him when I saw when I saw their vision. I was like, okay. Like, I can see where they're coming from. And I can see why Mark would eventually agree with that, because they did do a very good job.
Right. And, yeah, I'll just say, to end off that scene, that I thought that Luke was so lost and broken by that point. I think he needed intervention from another person to help him out. And to get it from his own master, I think, was appropriate for that scene, personally.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I can definitely resolve that one. So, yeah.
Now I think we've wrapped up the island kind of plot line and the Rey Kylo stuff before we get to the middle of the movie, which we'll get to later. But along with all this, we have another sequence that's gotten a fair bit of ire from fans: the Canto Bite find the Splicer storyline.
We should probably set up that because we haven't even talked about like the Leia thing and the Vice Admiral Holdo and Poe's arc.
Okay,
we haven't talked about any of that, so we like that's all like relevant to this.
If we want to do like a part 2 to split some of the movie as well, we could. So it just depends how we want to how much you do want to tackle this one.
Right. I mean, I'm fine with going. You guys are on the East Coast, so it's later for you than it is for me. But I'm fine to keep going.
Well, I'm Central Time, so
11:45 for me. So I have about comfortably like 20 more minutes. That's the only issue with me.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I guess fine. Let's talk about the Holdo stuff and the the whole Finn and Poe storylines here, and then maybe when we do another podcast, we can talk about what happens, in the second half.
Acts 3 and 4 of this movie.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the Leia in space sequence. Personally, for me, I agree that the visual of it is a little bit silly, but in the moment, in my theater, personally, on opening night when I saw it for the first time, people clapped when she used the Force and started flying, and I thought it was visually beautiful. I thought John Williams' score was great, and I liked seeing Leia use the Force, so personally, that scene worked for me. What about you guys?
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah, I actually laughed. I was the only person in the theater who honestly laughed because it was so bad. I laughed. Nobody's seen this. I looked at between him and Kyle, I'm like, we're dreaming, right? Like, it felt like a fever dream.
I didn't know how to deal with that because I actually don't think her flying through the air looks good.
It was Mary Poppins, and it was not good.
Yeah, it was Mary Poppins. It was not. It's not
Mary Poppins, y'all.
I actually had thought, I've been thinking about that sequence for a while, and I was
I wake up sweating in the middle of the night thinking about that sequence.
I think it would have been better if the explosion happens and then she turns and instead of being swept down in space, she stops it with the Force. I think that would have achieved the same visually striking, epic. She's using the Force moments.
Yeah, I was thinking,
but also not look dumb.
If she stopped the vacuum from going out and saved her and Akbar, because Akbar should not have died in that
scene. Akbar needed to die because Holdo needs to take
that scene. Akbar should have been the one to take the ship down. He should have died in this movie.
No, because
dude, he
outranks Holdo. It's just how it is.
100% without any or anything in your voice that he got his death he deserved.
No, he didn't get the death he deserved. I agree, but this is where there's nothing to be done about that. So
right. Well, and I think this might be a scenario where we have to contrast the Star Wars fans with the general audience, because we as Star Wars fans would love to see an epic death for Admiral Akbar, but average moviegoer does not even know who Admiral Akbar is.
Man, but they pitched this movie. First of all, every movie is. That meme made sure. Second, this movie's pitched for Star Wars fans. It's for an automatic for the big people, but at the same time, we're supposed to be a Star Wars fan getting into this. So I would disagree and say he definitely deserves more. And I have to ask Rian Johnson personally, why do you hurt my Akbar?
Why do you commit Akbar?
I didn't think it was him because the way it played out, Kyle was like, "Oh, dude, it's Akbar." I'm like, they would name him. He's too important just to be a nameless character in the background. Somebody says the Admiral once. I didn't think of it, and the only time you get his name dropped, Akbar is like, "Oh, Akbar died." I was like, "Wait, what?" And I looked around like, "That was Akbar."
Yeah, it was Akbar.
Yeah,
I had no idea. I thought they were instantly not.
I will also say that there was a scene in season 3 of Star Wars Rebels where Kanan, the Jedi, is flung out into space, and he does a similar thing where he uses the Force to pull himself up towards the ship, and he jumps off the ship and up into a hangar to save himself in time. So there is precedent for it.
No, I didn't question that she could do it the Force. It's just that should they show it like that? It's a visual thing. I didn't have any problems with you being able to pull yourself through the Force. That's whatever.
I've always liked it better when she has the more it's from episode 5. Her sense of Force stronger than most. I like that, the subtleties of the Force. I didn't need it blatantly thrown in my face.
Yeah, I didn't. It comes down to a visual for me. I do not like the visuals of it. I think it looks strange and unnatural and super CGI-y. It's just a weird sequence that I think could have been done in a different way and still accomplish the same
I
task.
agree with you. Where it should have been like her stopping it, or like
Yes, I think that would have looked cool. Because imagine like the explosion, but it's like frozen, or it's like slowly happening, and she's like struggling to move, like keep it at bay and move towards the airlock. I think that would have worked really cool. It would have been like that, like the scene in the like last X-Men movie, Apocalypse, where Quicksilver's running through the mansion as it explodes. It would be kind of like that, but
that'd be neat. And like, actually, here's a question for you guys then. Something my friend raised to me. He thought like rose the conjectured idea. Like, what if Kylo had been the one back?
What?
What if Kylo saved her? Like, he's the one who actually.
She'd
been knocked out.
I actually thought that's where this was going too. Like when they first cut to her like floating in space. Like, what if Kylo like flies back and like puts her back?
Conflict at a much higher level than him, which I think would be cool.
I think that would have been neat, but I feel like it would have like been contradictory to his arc that he's like trying to cultivate, to like kill the like let the past die, kill it if you have to, whole thing, the whole like shtick that he's got going on.
Right. I can personally buy with where Kylo is right now as a conflicted dark side user that he would spare his mom. That's why he doesn't shoot. But if he went back like and betrayed the First Order specifically to like save her, that would be like basically saying that he's redeemed or very close to it. So I'm not sure I would have liked that, considering where I wanted his arc to go.
Yeah, I just want to see what you guys thought. My friend raised that idea. I'm like, that is interesting. Like, that time in the movie, I actually didn't think about that. So
it's an interesting like thought process, but no, I think that like it would have like hurt his overall trajectory of like arc-ness, which is great, and I love his arc.
I'm very glad he did take a shot though. I was gonna say him and Pose. Pose was very invested.
Yeah,
I love Poe's arc, even though I know that there's like a lot of criticism for how it's executed. I adore his arc. I think it's great.
Finn's my favorite character in the new series, and his I was more disappointed in, but I did like how it ended.
His
I
is definitely the weakest arc.
Yeah,
his is definitely the weakest of the three, but like it's
paid off well. Because the way him and Poe contrast now is cool. I like
yes, I love that, and we'll talk about that later.
Right. And I'll lay this out right now, I suppose, because there was a plot hole that was bothering me throughout the first time I was watching the movie, where we have the establishment of the Snoke's huge ship and all the Star Destroyers shooting at the Raddus, at the Rebels' big ship. And I actually like the idea that they're actually like integrating the space technology into like the plot, where like, okay, well, if we put all of our shields behind us and we are faster than them, then we can stay ahead of them and our shields won't break, but we only have so much fuel. I think that's an interesting concept. The problem with it is that the First Order is completely stupid, because they could have had some of their Star Destroyers hyperspace jump away, come back and flank them, and they'd be done.
That's what I was going to say. That's the only thing, like, it's a weak argument, but I have one argument for that, because that was my biggest complaint amongst most, and it's the fact that, like, Hux is such an incompetent boob that his humor's got the best of him. That's literally what it is. He's like, we'd have them on a string, and keeps saying that. Everybody else like, can we just, like, no, we must toy with them. And that's just, you're supposed to see that he is just so jaded that, at this point, that he's an idiot, and you see how incompetent he is, but you're right. Like, I agree with you, but that's the only argument I have, is that he's just that overconfident.
Yep, that seems to be what they're going with.
Yeah, and killing ship by ship, you can see his confidence in this thing. He's like, oh, they're barely there, Captain Bounce.
Right. And so then, as you brought up, Andrew, this brings us Admiral Holo in as a character, Vice Admiral Holo, as the replacement for Leia. And personally, I quite liked the first scene with her with Poe, where she like called him a hotshot flyboy and was like, you just got demoted. You need to sit down and follow my orders. And I that whole scene kind of putting him in his place a little bit. I like that.
I actually like that scene, and upon rewatch, I have come to the conclusion that that whole like sequence does not bother me as much as it bothers everybody else in the free universe.
I will point out, there's an odd sexual tension between them.
There is yes, you pointed that out the first time.
It's really, it's really weird. They're they're inside each other's face, like, I'm not gonna respect you, Captain. And I was like, are they gonna kiss? Like, I was looking at that, like, what's about to happen?
Right. Yeah,
it's true. There's some weirdness there.
Right. Well, because another plot hole that many people have mentioned is that Poe, Finn, and Rose come up with this plan to go to Canto Bight to get the splicer, and that Poe Poe keeps it a secret from Holdo. It's a need to know basis, and then that Holdo never tells her plan to Poe, because if he had known, then the whole arc wouldn't have happened.
That's one thing my complaint was. Unless like Andrew had a good pitch for like what if there's a mole on board.
I have a real explanation, like it's in the movie.
Okay, because I'd love to know, because I actually was excited for her to be a First Order agent, but I like her arc better than it wasn't. But at first I was like, I could buy that. I'm like, that makes more sense. Why would she just?
I have a real pitch for why that's just in the movie, and it's just like kind of frustrating, but like it's supposed to be frustrating. Is that in the first scene that Alex was talking about, she's like, yeah, I don't have to explain anything to you because you're just a captain and I'm an admiral, and that's not what we do here. Like, that's not how military chain of command. No, she's not trying to teach him a lesson. That is how military command structure works. The admiral does not have to explain to a captain why they're doing what they're doing. That's just not how it works. Like, he's stepping out of line. Well, no, because like we've always been at the top of the chain of command in Star Wars movies.
That, or people are able to just go on bridge if they have a good idea. People listen. Like usually they've established. But this is
because it's a Bella drama, and she doesn't like do like that. Like, well, no, like there's no point in Star Wars in any of the movies where they're like, yeah, we're gonna listen to random grunt A over there because he wants to know what's going on, and we're just gonna tell him. Like, that's.
I don't know. I think she'd be smart in that. Where she realized he has a lot of clout. Everyone loves him. I should probably tell him because people are gonna listen to him.
No, like that's just because she's got half their fighters blown up, and his clout's kind of going down right now. And that she doesn't owe him any answers at all. And it's not like she didn't tell.
Everybody's up in arms, and he's clearly at the center of it. People are going to listen to him.
There's literally no, like, it's not like she didn't tell anybody about it.
We just don't. Everybody in the command knows what the hell's happening.
Do
like 4 people officers knew. Yeah, like 4 officers and no one else.
She had to tell them because they were refueling the transport ships.
She's like, I'm just refueling the ships. They're like, why?
They're following orders. That's what they do. She's not doing it to be a hero. She's doing it because she wants.
Right.
She just does it. Like,
really weak, and it was held together very thinly. I agree with Alex. Like, it's barely held together.
That's how military command structure works. It just is.
And I don't know.
It's frustrating. It's meant to be frustrating because you're supposed to feel what Poe's feeling right there, which is frustrated because Poe is the POV character in that sequence.
Yeah, and like a poorly put together sub-arc.
Okay, well, so here's because I was frustrated by the first time I watched it. Then on my rewatches, I was paying more attention to the details, and so I have no problem with the fact that she doesn't tell him the plan in that first scene for all the reasons that Andrew just said, as well as the fact that she may not have had the plan then. They might have like been looking around the system and trying to figure out what they were going to do, and then found the planet after the fact. It's in the second scene where Poe goes to say, is there any plan? Is there any plan? And she says the thing about, hope. If you just do it when you see it, you'll never, go through the night. Or
you'll never make it through the night. Right. Yeah, Leia taught me that. Yeah.
Right. And I like that scene. But then when Poe sees the ships and gets pissed at her and throws the thing down, I took note of the fact on my second viewing that a guard goes up to confront Poe, and she stops him at first. She stops the guard at first, and then he calls her a traitor, and then she says arrest this man or get him off my ship or whatever. And I think it's clear that she was concerned about a spy from the First Order being on the ship, and so that if the plan got around, that's how they were tracking them and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's part of the reason why she didn't tell him, but I wish that the movie had laid that seed in there.
Yeah, if they'd said something about I'm afraid of a spy, or at least showed her a scene talking about it, I would have bought it, but they didn't, so...
Right, and there's because when you start thinking about it, there's so many ways that she could have, gone around it by whispering it to Poe in confidence or something, But the important thing is that because I don't think she was justified in talking about it in the first scene, it's after that he sends Finn and Rose off on their mission, so that would have happened regardless, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and Poe would have learned about her other plan after the fact. But they didn't do that because obviously they're trying to build the drama of that whole sequence. So it is frustrating, but I think Andrew's correct in that we know how movies work. We know that, okay, Poe is going to, do the coup d'etat against her, and he's going to be right, and they're going to save the day, and Holdo's going to look like an idiot. but in the end, that all ends in failure, and it subverts your expectations. It doesn't play out like how other movies play out, which I like. I like that it takes.
It's not gonna
does
be the
something
way
different.
you think.
Exactly.
True.
All right. So I think we've done a good job on the Holdo Poe kind of side of that story. Now, do we want to talk about Canto Bite, or is it time to wrap up for this episode?
I think that's a good thing because we have a lot to say. Yeah, we have a lot to say on Canto Bite.
Yeah.
We have a lot to talk about there.
How tied to part 2, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Canto Bite in part 2, as well as then all the stuff that happens in the second half of the movie, which I think will have quite a few positive things to say because there's a lot of good stuff that comes there.
Better half of the movie. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely say though, for everybody here, sounding like I'm an angry old fan. I will admit I did love this movie. The reason I'm giving it such a hard time is because I have to be critical on Star Wars. It's my favorite thing, so I gotta be.
No, it's Star Wars, and it wouldn't be right if we just let it slide through a bunch of stupid crap. But
I legitimately say I do like this movie a lot. I really enjoyed it. But
I genuinely think this is
it's my favorite.
It's definitely my favorite of the new Disney stuff. It's probably the best, objectively best Star Wars movie. I mean, definitely since 3, maybe even since the original trilogy. I don't know. I don't know. I'm about to really think about its place in Star Wars.
I just watched 1 and 2 recently before this, and my order might change for the first time. And this,
neither of the last 2 movies have ever broken into any of the Lucas films.
This honestly might be above because I definitely say I like this objectively better than Attack of the Clones. 1, the last scene almost ties it up for me, but I almost like it better than 1 too. I almost say this would take above 1 and 2. Not 3, but definitely above 1.
No, definitely not 3. I don't think it's better than
3 is legitimately good.
Yeah.
Because Revenge of the Sith is so good.
I would agree. Revenge of the Sith is amazing. And for me, on my first viewing of it, I was honestly overwhelmed. It throws so much at you.
It is a lot to take in on your first viewing.
I remember Andrew and I shared the same sentiment where I was taken aback by how long it was, because when we at the end of the Canto Bite arc, when they're flying back to the First Order Dreadnought and everything, I'm like, don't they have a snow or ice planet to fight on or something? And then that whole entire segment went down.
I had actually thought the same thing when cause you see everybody showing up to the Dreadnought to and you're like, oh, so it's all going down now. But I'm like, wait, they haven't gotten the crate yet. What is that gonna happen? Oh my god, there's a whole 4th act to this movie.
But the second watching, you're right, goes by much faster. Things flew the second time.
No, I was like, wow, it's already over. I really had a really good time with this.
Right, and my last point I would like to make is it's obviously very clear from anybody who looks at the Rotten Tomatoes with the critics score and then the audience score, and going on any sort of Star Wars website right now, there's a lot of division over this movie. There's a lot of debate going on right now.
That's how I know it's good, man. It's causing debate. If it's just okay, it's not that good.
I would agree. I mean, I think that it's already more interesting to me than Force Awakens for having caused all this interesting discussion, and I'd like to think that this podcast has been a good example of cordial debate between conflicting points of view, not going on Twitter and hating on Rian Johnson or signing a petition to remove Last Jedi from Star Wars canon or this other stupid stuff.
That's so silly.
We're not doing any of that.
I think I mentioned it earlier on, and I really stick to the point. Andrew and I were really, especially Kyle, he was really conflicted, but because his friends really didn't like it. But he kept saying time again, what made this one special? And I stand by because it was different. Because Rian Johnson did something different, just like Lucas always did. You always push forward Star Wars. That's the point of Star Wars. It breaks boundaries, and he did. He really did.
He tried something really different.
And I loved it.
And I think that's great. And I know that, in some of the choices were odd and strange, but, I think that in the end, it was all to, justify a different movie. And honestly, that's what I wanted most about going into this movie.
I want something new.
It was genuinely different than any other Star Wars movie I'd ever watched, and that is what it got. So
Rian Johnson, when you listen to this, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Rian Johnson.
When we hear your lovely voice.
Well, if you want to come on the show, we will gladly.
Yeah, please, Ryan. I can't pay you, but I'll thank you. I'll give you a lot of compliments.
A lot. So much.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with what you just said. After Force Awakens, I was upset with how safe it played it and how much of a copycat it was of previous films. So I heard that this film was taking risks and doing something different, and that excited me because that is what George Lucas did with all of the movies. He always did something crazy and push boundaries and all that stuff. So I like that we're back to that with Star Wars. This honestly feels almost like Force Awakens was a prologue, but this is the first true film of the Disney era. That's what it feels like to me.
Jesus,
I
this movie felt like a trilogy in itself.
it covered on, dude. Like Claire pointed out, watching episode 2 and 1, they crammed a lot in Star Wars films. It's finally got that old feel of there's a lot going on there.
There was like so much, like a lot of plot ground can be covered in a Star Wars movie, especially like movies like this and Revenge of the Sith. Like a lot of things happen in those, like in the stretch of these few hours.
And the biggest question is, how's JJ gonna be able to tie this up now? So
Yep.
Who knows? By retconning everything that this movie
I
is.
would be so sad.
Yeah, that would be interesting for sure. So, like we said, we're going to definitely do a part 2 of this podcast where we discuss the Canto Bight section as well as the second half of the movie and all the stuff that goes down there, and maybe even a podcast beyond that, just about the general, like how it fits into the saga as a whole, because there's just so much to discuss here. So I want to thank you guys both for coming onto the podcast and talk with me about this. We've been texting back and forth, so I thought it was best that we just get on here and let our voices do all the talking.
I would agree.
Yeah, sorry I have to get off because East Coast, I'm a loser. Sorry, guys.
All right. It is very late at night at the recording of this, so we should probably...
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. So if you out there enjoyed listening to this, feel free to subscribe to the channel. There will be more Star Wars discussion coming here in the future for sure. And until next time, may the Force be with you.